We're going to talk about how to develop courage today. And I have a feeling that all of us in some arena of our life need courage. It could be that you are facing a difficulty in your marriage, and maybe you need courage to set a boundary, or maybe you need courage to submit to your husband's leadership. Lisa? Kimberly? Anyone? I see if you're paying attention. Maybe you need courage to maybe release your teenager or your adult child into God's hand instead of trying to control every little aspect of their life. Maybe you need courage to persevere through something really difficult, like a financial hardship or a health hardship, a job loss, unwanted divorce, whatever. Maybe you need courage to stay calm during the political fighting that's going on in our country right now, and you just need courage to stay calm. Or maybe you need courage to stand up for godly values in a secular culture where people are espousing all sorts of bizarre things, and you're like, okay, maybe God's prompting me, maybe not, but maybe God's prompting you to speak out gently and kindly, but firmly about godly values. Maybe you're needing courage to step out and obey a prompting that God has given you to do something that seems kind of scary, and you're like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. Or maybe God's calling you to have courage to break free from a bad habit or a dysfunctional pattern that's really not helping you anymore, and He's like, you can do this, but you need courage. And as I was praying about this, I sensed that God is saying courage is doing what you know is right, even when it's scary, because you know that God will be with you no matter what. And I'm so thankful that God put so many female examples of courage in the Bible. Isn't that kind of cool that He gave us some female examples? Just going to breeze through a couple of them. Abigail, some of you might remember her story from 1 Samuel 25, where she's married to kind of a moron and an idiot, really. And if I can just say that, which I just did. And so he's basically putting his whole family at risk of being like wiped out by David and his band of warriors. And she's smart enough to go like, you know what? I am going to like do something pretty radical, and I'm going to go to this guy, David, with his band of warriors, and I'm going to like bring all these provisions, and I'm going to bow down and say, please spare us. And that took a lot of courage for her to do that, and it turned out really well for her. Rahab was a prostitute. She did something super courageous. She hid two Jewish spies, two Israeli spies in her house, and that took tremendous courage, because if it was found out that she did that, she would have been like, dead. But she did it anyway. And she did it probably because God was prompting her to do that. It's like, okay, we can learn from her. Well, not about the prostitute part, about the other part. Yeah. Esther, she had to, oh man, talk about courageous. She's the queen, but you're not supposed to go before your husband, the king, unless he summons you. But in order to save the Jewish people, she boldly broke the rules at the risk of, again, losing her life, and said, I have to do what's necessary to protect my people. I'm going to go before the king even though he has not summoned me. And it turned out well for her. Deborah, my namesake, you can read about her story in Judges 4. Her mighty generals were afraid to go out to battle without her, so she, the woman, said, okay, fine, busters, if you guys are so whiny and whippy, I'll go out with you. And she went out with them to war. And even in the New Testament, there's a lady named Priscilla. You can read about her in 1 Corinthians 16. And she and her husband courageously opened their home for Christian meetings when the early Christians were really being severely persecuted. And she was like, I'm opening my home even so that we can continue meeting. So lots of female role models for courage. But also my favorite role model for courage is three guys with the weird names. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. Daniel 3, let's start reading there in verse 13. Nebuchadnezzar flew into a rage and ordered that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought before him. When they were brought in, Nebuchadnezzar said to them, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you refuse to serve my gods or to worship the gold statue I've set up? I will give you one more chance to bow down and worship the statue I've made when you hear the sound of the musical instruments. But if you refuse, you will be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace. And then what God will be able to rescue you from my power? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty. But even if he doesn't, we want to make it clear to you, your majesty, that we will never serve your gods or worship the gold statue you have set up. I'm sorry, I probably would not have been nearly that brave. I would be like, blazing furnace? I don't think so. I mean, I would have been so wimpy in that moment, and they're like, we trust in God completely. We will courageously do what needs to be done here because we will not bow down to another God. It's like, talk about courage. Well, let's dive into the Bible to find 10 insights that can help us develop courage for your particular situation. And maybe before we even do that, just pause for a second. Like, what is the situation, the relationship, whatever, that you need courage in this season? What is it? Is it in your marriage, with a child, with a relative, financial, maybe something that God's prompting you to do and you've been like a little reluctant, a little scared? What is it for you? Because as we walk through this, think about these 10 insights from the Bible to help you develop courage in that area. So here's our first insight. Realize that God doesn't want you to wait until you feel courageous. Instead, He's asking you to make the decision to be courageous instead of shrinking back in fear. Did you know that courage isn't a feeling? Courage isn't a feeling. It's a decision. So many places in the Bible, we think, oh, I'm waiting to feel respect for my husband. No, God didn't say to wait until you feel respect. He just said respect. Courage. God didn't say, wait until you feel all this courage bubbling up. He just said, be courageous. It's a decision. God specifically tells His people to choose to be strong and courageous. He says it 14 times in the Old Testament alone. One example is 1 Chronicles 22, verse 13. He says, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or lose heart. And in the New Testament, here's an example. God tells us in 1 Corinthians 16, 13, stand firm in the faith. Be courageous. Be strong. And I have to ask you, have you been waiting to feel courageous? Stop waiting and start choosing to trust God in whatever He's prompting you to do, because courage isn't a feeling, it's a decision you make. That leads us to our next point. Realize that you can indeed make the choice to be courageous in your situation because you can totally trust in God's mighty power and love for you. That's why you can make the decision to be courageous, because you're choosing to believe and trust in His mighty power and love for you. Joshua 1:9, this is my command, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Again, courage is not a feeling. I want to just drill down on this like over and over again. It's not a feeling. It's a decision to trust God because He loves you, and nothing is impossible with Him. But we can't be ignorant of Satan's schemes, right? Because isn't he always perched on our shoulder, just yammering away, whispering all these lies? You can't trust God. This is too scary. You should shrink back in fear. You should throw the covers over your head and just be depressed and fearful. Like, that's what the enemy's whispering to us. And you know what we do when we hear that voice? Boom! Get off my shoulder. Stop whispering in my ear, right? Like, no, I'm not listening to the filthy lies from the enemy. No, I can trust God because He is mighty, powerful, and He loves me. This next point, I want to take some time out because I felt like God was really showing me this for today. We must train ourselves to stop looking back and gravitating to old, familiar patterns when challenges hit us, and instead stubbornly turn forward, trusting God to be with us. Courage means we let go of past patterns and what seems familiar, and we decide to move forward. The Israelites were terrible at this. They were terrible at this. As God was leading them forward into the promised land, He kept providing for them miraculously, right? Like manna from heaven and all these things. But each time, every single time they encountered any adversity, they would cave into fear, they'd get hysterical, they'd start whining, and they would actually believe that it would be better to go back to what was familiar, even if it was being a slave in Egypt, because that was familiar. Okay, well, we'd rather just go back there then. But we do the same thing sometimes. Let's read their story. This is when they sent spies to check out the promised land, and most of the spies reported that the land was inhabited by giants, and the people became fearful. Numbers 14. Then all the congregation raised a loud cry, and the people wept that night. And all the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The whole congregation said to them, "Would that we have died in the land of Egypt, or would that we have died in the wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become a prey. Would it not be better for us to go back to Egypt?" And they said to one another, "Let us choose a leader and go back to Egypt, where they were slaves." But we do the same thing sometimes, and we can learn from the Israelites what not to do. When we hit challenges, it's so easy to shrink back and return to old, dysfunctional, and unhealthy, and just dysfunctional coping mechanisms and such, because they seem familiar at least. But God is saying, trust me, take hold of my hand. I've got this. We can move forward together. So again, think about a current challenging situation in your life. Do you have a bit of fear in that challenge? Probably. That's kind of normal to have a little bit of fear rise up in that area of challenge. But because of that fear, do you tend to fall back into old, familiar, unhelpful patterns, such as maybe isolating or having like toxic resentment that you just kind of cozy up to? Or maybe you're a conflict avoider and you just sink back into that pattern, which is usually not very helpful. Or maybe you're sinking into a pattern of self-pity, woe is me, and victim mentality. Or maybe you're now walking on eggshells, and that's your old familiar pattern. Or maybe you're self-medicating through overeating or over-drinking or over-scrolling or over-shopping. Your Amazon cart is filling up, whatever. And God is saying, don't go back to that old territory. Grab my hand and let's move forward together. A Bible verse that really summarizes this principle is found in Isaiah 43. It's become one of my favorite verses. Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? Yes. So where are you we all do this. I'm not immune from this either. Like we all tend to, in those moments of challenge, and we're kind of fearful, we tend to gravitate to the old familiar, even if it's not helpful, even if it's dysfunctional. Where is that for you? Let's identify that this morning. Next, we can step forward with confidence and courage when we are doing our best to obey God's instructions instead of ignoring them. Listen to Joshua 1, verse 7. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the instructions Moses gave you. Do not deviate from them, turning either to the right or to the left. Then you will be successful in everything you do. And no, we're not, the Israelites wandering around the desert, but I think the principle still applies to us. God rewards those who are seeking, doing their best to obey Him. And then you become more successful in everything you do. So where is God maybe calling you and I to repentance this morning? Where we've been kind of ignoring His instructions, and He's been trying to gently convict us and say, come on, let's get on board together, get into alignment with me, and then we can move forward with success. Next, we are best able to step forward with courage when we have come to personally experience God's goodness, love, and power for ourselves. We need to personally experience God's goodness, love, and power for ourselves. Listen to 1 John 4:18. Perfect love expels all fear. If we are afraid, it is for fear of punishment, and this shows that we have not fully experienced His perfect love. I have learned this. We have to come to experience God's love and power personally before we're willing to trust Him. You can't live off your mother's faith forever. You can't live off your dad's faith forever, your husband's faith forever, your friend's faith forever. You have to, at some point, develop your own personal relationship with Jesus. Then as you start asking Him to guide you and direct you, and you ask Him how to pray in specific situations, and you start to see the answers to prayer, and you start to see Him moving in your life, you're like, whoa, now I've come to personally experience Him. Oh, now I can actually trust Him because I've personally come to experience Him. So are you seeking Him at every juncture where you have a decision to make? Like, are you asking for His guidance? Are you waiting for His guidance? Are you, when you pray, are you saying, Lord, show me how to pray into this situation so I'm praying in line with your will, because then I'm going to see results. And then as I see results, I fall in love with you. I'm like, yes, that's coming to personally experience God. Next, developing courage isn't about bulldozing your way forward based on your own ideas, but instead it's about disciplining yourself to stay right behind God where He is leading. Right tucked up behind God where He is leading. Deuteronomy 31:6. So be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid and do not panic before them, for the Lord your God will personally go ahead of you. He will neither fail you nor abandon you. God gave me a vision of many of you, and this is sometimes me too, just kind of skipping ahead. Like, I have all these ideas of what I should be doing. And then getting into trouble. And then encountering anxiety and fear. And instead, God's saying, could you just hang on a second and get behind me where I'm going, and I will blaze the trail. Instead of you trying to blaze the trail, which is exhausting and usually doesn't even work very well, how about if you get right behind me where I'm going? I like to think of it as following Him so closely that I'm in His shadow all the time, like just right tucked up, right behind. And I had to do that this week. I was ready to bulldoze ahead on a decision, because some of you know I'm kind of like a high achiever mentality. Someone was like, and now I'm going to do this. And so like all these ideas, and it's like, oh, okay, this is the next one. And God's like, how about you don't get ahead of me? Let's calm down here. Let's calm down. How about you get tucked right behind me, and I will open doors, and I will move, and then you just follow me. Probably works a whole lot better. Our next point, we can confidently step forward in doing hard things when we remind ourselves that God will reward for our courage and obedience. Ooh, I like that. 2 Chronicles 15:7, but as for you, be strong and courageous, for your work will be rewarded. Ooh, how awesome is that? God will actually reward you as you stop and you ask Him what to do, and then you step out in courage. He rewards you for that obedience. Our next insight from God's Word, I love this one. We develop courage by reminding ourselves that we are not alone. Jesus is holding us in the palm of His hand. He's holding us in the palm of His hand. So I want to share with you something kind of interesting. I had this revelation this week. Often when we are praying at our tables, or someone, calls me and says, can you pray with me about this, financial thing, this health crisis, this relationship, marriage problem, whatever. Often, as I'm asking God how to pray, I would say like 50% of the time, God prompts me to pray. I'll just pretend I'm praying for Kimberly. He prompts me to pray, Lord, hold Kimberly in the palm of your hand. Some of you probably heard me say that before when I'm praying. Hold Kimberly in the palm of my hand. Hold Marlene in the palm of your hand. And I've always thought, why am I prompted to pray like that? But what does that even mean? Like, why am I always praying? Hold this person in the palm of your hand. Well, I stumbled across this verse in Isaiah, and it all is making sense now. Isaiah 49. Can a mother forget her nursing child? Can she feel no love for the child she has born? But even if that were possible, I would not forget you. See, I have written your name on the palms of my hand. That's pretty close. That's pretty much like you are so close to God, you're in His hand. And I can have courage knowing that I am in His hand. He's engraved my name on His hand. He's holding me in His hand. He's holding you in His hand. And so I can move forward with courage because I'm that close. I'm that close to Jesus. I love that. Next, we develop courage to do hard things when we realize God is our heavenly Papa. And like a little child, we grab hold of His hand. Romans 8:15, so you've not received a spirit that makes you fearful slaves. Instead, you received God's Spirit when He adopted you as His own children. Now we call Him Abba, Father. I love how my littlest grandchildren hold my hand. Like, I took a little walk with my 2-year-old grandson the other day, and he reached out to hold my hand. I don't know why, he's just not melt your heart with a little toddler, like perhaps holding your hand. And you can just tell that they feel like so secure when they're holding your hand. And I think it's the same way. Our Heavenly Papa's like, would you hold my hand? I want to take you on a walk. We're going to take a walk together. We're going to go do something together. Don't run ahead of me now. Right? Hold my hand, and I'm going to walk forward with you, and we're going to do some amazing things. It's like, with my Heavenly Papa next to me, what would I have to be afraid of, right? When I'm holding His hand. And that leads us to our final point. We develop courage when we remain so tightly connected to God every day that we know we have His help at any given moment that is needed, because we're so tightly connected to Him. Hebrews 13:6 says, "The Lord is my helper, so I will have no fear. What can your people do to me?" Are you tightly connected to God so that you have His help at any given moment? For me, being tightly connected to God means that I'm talking to Him all day long. I'm just processing everything. I'm talking to Him about fears, about hopes, about dreams. I'm just talking to Him all day long. And then I'm stopping. I close my mouth for a little while. I'm like, Lord, what do you want me to know? What are you prompting me to do? And it's this constant conversation that keeps me tightly connected to God. I wanted to finish our time by just telling a couple of brief stories about stepping out of courage in my own life. Maybe that will inspire you in some area of your life. And it's not like I have got this mastered at all. But in various moments of my life, I'm like, okay, Lord, I'm just going to trust you and I'm going to move forward. So one of them, for some of you, you have maybe teenagers or even adult children, and sometimes you get worried about the choices that they're making, or maybe they make bad choices, and you're like, oh. Well, I had a moment in time where one of my children made a really bad choice, got arrested, and this was the second time they got arrested. And the first time, and I helped provide a lawyer. The second time, I'm ready to go to the bank account and drain it to hire a lawyer, and I hear God say, no, don't do that. I'm like, well, that's not going to bode well then, because if they don't have a lawyer, or if they're getting, when they assign you a lawyer, what is that called? Yeah, a court-appointed lawyer. Usually they're not very good. Public defender, not very good. I shouldn't say that for all the public defenders listening. But you know what I mean? They're not like nearly as invested in trying to, do the best for you. And so I'm like, well, this is not going to work well. I have to hire a lawyer. And I heard God say, no, they need to stew in it. Whatever the consequences are for not having their own lawyer, even if it means more jail time or prison time, this is part of learning. And I'm like, that is a pretty big lesson. That's a big, hairy lesson right there. Like, that's bad. And I heard God say, you're going to need courage to do this, but you can do this with me. You're not going to hire a lawyer. Do you know how hard that was? All the moms, can you imagine, like, oh, yes, okay, well, my child might go to prison for more time. Oh, biggie. Like, no. That was like, are you sure about this, God? But I prayed, and I felt like God said, this is what to do. And I'm not saying it turned out great. Maybe they spent more time in prison than they needed to, but God was showing me, like, trust me, move forward with what I'm asking you to do, and I will be with you. That was a tough decision, but with God, you can do anything. Another one that was stressful was when we didn't have our own building for our ministry. Some of you have been with us many years, and we were nomads. We were meeting whatever church would give us room, and then we were spending, it seemed like forever, tearing down and setting up and putting things away in totes. And it was just like, oh my gosh, it was exhausting to do that. For years and years we did that. And then one day we just felt like God said, it's time to get your own building. You're going to get your own building. We have no money. The ministry has no money. The ministry has $0 to put toward a rent payment. And yet we felt like God said, step out in faith. I will provide. Well, how is that going to happen? I don't know, but if God says to do it, should we step out in courage or not? What would be the correct answer? Yes, we step out in courage. And so my husband and I sat down with the owners of this space, and we're like, yeah, we don't really have a plan, a financial plan we can show you. We have nothing, but we're pretty sure that God's going to provide. We had no financial records to indicate that we could make these payments at all. We're talking thousands and thousands of dollars every month that we cannot show that we have any income stream to make that happen. And for some odd reason, the guy signed the lease with us. And we signed a 5-year lease with our personal names on the lease. Raul Chavez and Debbie Chavez on the lease as the responsible parties. Do you think that required a little bit of courage? Yes. A little bit. Yes, that was kind of one of those hairy moments. We're like, okay, well, I sure hope we're hearing from God correctly on this one. But when God tells you to do something, what do? You move forward even when you don't see how it's possible. And guess what? We're still here. It's like 7 years later, I think. Yeah, this is our 7th year. We're entering our 7th year. Have we ever missed a rent payment? Not a one. Now, sometimes it's been ridiculously close, like, it's the 10th hour and it's like, but God has always provided, because when He tells you to step forward in courage, He provides the means to make that happen. And one last example, when my husband Raul died, some of you have heard this story, but 5 days later, as I'm sending out the text messages to all of his friends saying, hey, you might not know that Raul passed away, I text this one guy named Mark, and he's a pastor, and he texted me back and said, well, my wife died a year ago, and I heard the Holy Spirit go, ding, this is your next husband. It's 5 days after my husband has passed away. Do I really want to hear this? God, what are you doing? But he was just saying, when you're ready, I have a husband for you down the road. I'm like, okay, so I just kind of put that on the back burner. But later on, 4 or 5 months later, God's like, it's time to start dating Mark. I don't even like Mark. I'm sure he's not watching this video. I didn't even really like Mark. He seemed like not the right person for me in the slightest. And then God, a couple months after we started, or actually it seems like maybe a month or two after we started dating, God's like, tell him you love him. I don't love him. Why would I do that? And God hounded me, step forward in courage and do what I'm prompting you to do. So I actually, without feeling any love, I respected him. I told him one day I loved him. That was really fun, because I was like, okay, Lord, I'm just following wherever you're leading. And you know what's funny is that God knew I would grow to love him. He was just he was ahead of me, but I followed his promptings, and we got married, and he is a wonderful man, and I've come to love him. It's like, stepping forward in courage when God is prompting you is the right thing to do. It leads to peace. There is no fear when you're trusting God because you've personally experienced him in the past. Maybe if I hadn't seen him come through with the financial provision for this ministry, maybe I wouldn't have trusted God to step forward in this other area of my life. The first step is the most important one, right? Trust him for the first thing, then you see that he's trustworthy. Then you trust him for the second thing, you see that he's trustworthy. Pretty soon you're like, yeah, I'll go anywhere you want to go. I trust you completely. And that is my prayer for you guys. That you step forward in courage on these little things, and that you grow to trust him more and more and more, and see amazing things happen as you step out in faith.